Crafting Transformative Information. A very warm welcome to everyone present over here. I, Vedanti Kohli, moderator from Planetic Media House, would like to introduce you all to our today's webinar session of Text Talks, Introduction to Another Avengers Assemble, presented by Planotech Media House, Crafting Transformative Information. With this, I would also like to thank Darshan Kumar and Niranjan Krishnamurthy for providing this platform to us. Over to you, Dhanush.
Thank you so much, Vedanti Ryan. And today you are with the mesmerized speakers around. The first speaker we're going to call on is MC Sitara Raghuvanshi, who's also a celebrity anchor, a host of 100 events and 15 press conference. Really glad to invite you on this platform of Planotech. It's all yours, man.
Thank you so much, Vedanti, and thank you so much, Dhanush. Also, thank you to Planotech Media for having me on board. To start off with, I wasn't aware that I was supposed to give a speech. So I'm just going to talk to you from what is on top of my mind. And I've been told that I'm supposed to talk about entertainment. So just to tell you a little bit about who I am, where I come from, what do I do, I think that's a good starting point. So my name is Sarita Raghuvanshi, and I started my journey as an anchor in the year 2013. I started off with some really small scale activations, and then from activations I graduated to doing events, and from about 2013 to now I'm about 1,000 events old, and I've hosted about 8 events on the virtual platforms. The most important thing that we talk about entertainment today is the fact that entertainment is evolving, and also that entertainment is an area which is a very important part the popular culture of the country and has an impact on every single resident, every single citizen of the country. So I'll first talk about the impact. No, I'll first talk about how entertainment is evolving and how we as individuals have to constantly adapt and learn to conquer the world of entertainment. Now, when I started off as an anchor, my job was I just had to go to a mall, get my spiel, understand the product, my audience, and I was done. And from there, when I went on to do an event, I understood that being an MC is far more than just reading a spiel. And that I'll tell you what my learnings were in the process. I discovered that when you're hired as an MC for an event or for a brand, you are actually representing the brand. If I am doing an event for a lifestyle event, my language is going to be very different from when I'm doing an event for an automobile brand. So you need to be able to host any event. Now, when I speak to a brand, but there is a lot more than that. For example, you need to understand what kind of an audience you are going to be talking to. Now, when I say what kind of an audience, you should have an understanding of the demographics of the audience, what are the languages that the audience are comfortable in. So you need to have a very crystal clear understanding of all of these. That is when you can craft your engagement to make sure that it has the maximum impact on your audience. Apart from this, similarly, when you have your audience or when you have your speaker coming up, it's very, very important to get the names of the people right. And the key to doing that is, this is what I have learned, or this is what I do, this is my trick. I note down the phonetical spelling of the person that I am going to be inviting on stage. Now, whether a body or whether it is a presenter, the name has to be right. There is no two ways about it. Apart from this, for everybody who's just starting out their journey, who is a budding anchor or is an aspiring anchor, there are a few things that you need to have in place when you are reaching out to an event manager, or you're reaching out to a client, or you're wanting to connect with somebody. You should have your collaterals in place, marketing collaterals. When I say collaterals, I mean things like your basic website, your basic profile, and a basic video of who you are, where you come from, what kind of a body of work you have. All of these things need to be in place. And another very important thing for everybody who's an aspiring MC, please don't ping an event manager 10 times in a day, because you need to understand that an event has multiple elements, and MC is one of those elements. There are hundreds of other elements that are involved in an event, and an event manager is dealing with all of those. And that time during which he or she is dealing with all of those, he or she doesn't need to be bothered by 10 other messages or 100 other messages from people at that point in time aren't very important, right? So limit your interaction to professionalism, and make sure that you have your collaterals in place. Very important. Make sure that you do your research, you understand the audience that you're dealing with, you understand the brand that you are representing, and do justice. So these are my major, I would say, things that I wish I had learned earlier, but finally I do know with the experience that I have, I do know now. And for everybody who's aspiring to be an MC, these are the things that we need to understand and keep in mind and operate accordingly. Now, talking about the impact of entertainment. Now, live events are relatively a smaller part of entertainment. What is a major part of entertainment is the movies that we see, is the music videos that we get to watch, and the kind of songs that we hear. And I, for one, I'm a strong believer of the fact that the movies, the songs, the videos have a very deep social impact on the audience. So everybody who's creating entertainment in any form has to be extremely sensitive and responsible when he or she is creating a piece of entertainment. I think representation of women is something that is very close to my heart in the field of entertainment, but I'm not too sure if I'm expected to talk about that or not. Also, I don't know what is my time limit. So maybe Dhanush, you could tell me how much more time I have, and then probably I'll tell you, or we could jump into the Q&A. And then later on, once the other panelists have spoken, maybe we could discuss the impact of entertainment on the society.
Ma'am, you take your time. Ma'am, you take your time.
Okay, so I think we should let the other panelists come in, and then we could discuss the impact of entertainment collectively.
Ma'am, actually, you just have to speak about what you have to say, and then afterwards we will put some questions in front of you.
So do you want to start
then
the Q&A now?
Ma'am, if you are ending right now, then we can continue with the questions.
Okay, we'll continue with the Q&A.
Ma'am, anything more if you want to speak, then we can go with it.
No, if you have any questions, go ahead and ask them. Not a problem.
Okay, so ma'am, it was great to have you here. Such a great discussion we have with you, ma'am. Thank you so much. You explained what entertainment is and what the thing is about. So, ma'am, how do you take entertainment as the most serious part of your life? How we can entertain ourselves when we feel bad in some of these situations? How we can be happy in that situation? How we can entertain ourselves means how we can be happy among the things that which makes us sad. How we can be happy at that times. Please.
Okay, so I think the definition of entertainment varies from person to person, and also the definition of happiness varies from person to person. I can tell you what personally makes me happy. I'm usually the happiest when I'm listening to good music, and again, good music is subjective. So when I'm listening to a music the kind of music that I enjoy, or when I'm reading something is when I am happy. So no matter how sad I am, no matter how upset or angry I am, if I find the book that I was reading, and if I'm in the process of reading something, I just go back to the book and I start reading and I forget the rest of the world. So reading and music really work for me.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for such a great information and for such a great answer. Thank you, ma'am. So now we are having Anshulika Kapoor Chaudhary with us. We welcome you, ma'am.
Well, good morning, everyone. And moving ahead, we would like to move forward with our next speaker, who is Lieutenant Rita Gangwani. She is having a World Book of Records. She is a beauty pageant and a phenomenal modeling coach. Welcome, Rita. And today, she would be presenting all of us on the topic of personality development. With these, I would like to welcome Rita Gangwani, ma'am. Over to you. Thank you.
Yeah, first of all, thank you very much for inviting me. It's a privilege to be speaking to almost 56 participants out here. And I would also like to say a big thank you to Sarita, who just spoke. because I know how much of guts it requires, how much of confidence is required to actually be facing the audience. And somebody who's at the level where she is, I think hats off to her for holding about 1,000 events I heard she's done, and couple of virtual ones too. So it was great to hear her. And yeah, coming back to my topic about personality development, before I do that, let me introduce myself to all the people out here. I'm a retired lieutenant from Indian Army, and I took my voluntary retirement in 1982. So it's been a long, long time. And in the Army, we had a subject called OLQ, Officers Like Qualities, where they used to teach us how to sit, how to stand, how to shake hands, and all those things when I was learning in the Army. And when I used to come home and meet my civilian friends, I realized they didn't have that kind of finesse. So there was a blueprint in my mind that whenever I quit Army, this is what I would want to pursue. So the time I left the Army, I then was thinking of the career path ahead, and that's when I decided that I think I should get into polishing people. So whatever I had learned in the Army wasn't enough, so I had to get myself certified for that. And it's been almost 34 years I'm in the industry. And over the years, I got attached to a lot of modeling agencies, fashion houses, films, television, beauty pageants, and then it just grew. So I cover a lot of profiles from my youngest student is 2.5 years old, who comes to learn about uh, how to eat with fork and spoon. And my eldest student is 82. You will wonder what an 82-year wants to learn from me. That 82-year-old lady, she's a mother-in-law and she's a nani dadi, and she's just learning how to build the generation gap, how to be modern yet old school of thought. So it's an interesting lot of people I train. And what do I do? In the broad term, I can say I polish them. And as I said, it depends on from person to person which area of their life they want to polish. And a lot of people don't even understand the term what is personality development. So before I yeah, I think, yeah, that was enough about me. And yeah, my most important thing is that I have been honored by World Book of Records for my work in personality development and pageantry. And for all the audience, I would just want to tell you that I have given India Miss World 2017, Manushi Chiller. She's I've been her foundation coach. Vidisha Balyan, the first Miss Deaf World to India. I have given Laksh Chaudhary, the youngest Mr. India, and many, many more. Well, I think that's enough of boasting from me. Now let's come to the subject, personality development. As I was saying, that a lot of people don't know what is personality development or what is personality. You know, they get confused. They think maybe wearing good clothes is a good personality. Some people feel maybe being fair is a good personality. Some people feel being tall is a good personality. So there is a lot of confusion in people about understanding what a good personality is. So first thing, I would like to burst this myth. What is a good personality? Well, good personality is actually, I'll give you an example. For example, if you look at Earth, the planet Earth, it is made up of 5 elements. As we call in Hindi, Jal, Vayu, Prithvi, Akash, and Agni. That is water, fire, air, sky, and the land. So Earth is made up of these 5 elements. And when God created Earth, what did he do? He planned it in such a way that everything is in a balance. If we had too much of air, we would fly away. Too much of fire, we'll burn ourselves. So he planned this earth in such a way that all the elements of the earth are in a balanced form. So exactly like this, a good personality is also a balance of certain elements. We have to have these 5 elements in a person, just like earth. But most important thing is that they should be in balance. Now, what are the ingredients? How do you make a good personality? It's not just looks. It's not just, your good clothes and stuff. So what is a good personality? It says good personality is sum total of, kul milake, sum total of physical. That means to look good. Looking good doesn't mean wearing branded clothes. Good looking means good. Physical means having good personal hygiene, wearing neat clothes, smelling nice, brushing your teeth, your hair in place, your skin in place. You look presentable. That's what I mean. So physical, mental. Mental means a person should be able to handle himself in any kind of a situation, should be able to control their anger, should be able to handle their grief, should be able to control their excitement. So should know how to take charge of themselves mentally. Then comes socially. Socially, this person should know how do I conduct myself in any social situation. What will be my behavior in office? What should be my behavior with friends? What should be my behavior in a party? Etiquette, in simple words, you can say the manners required to be accepted in society. Society has created certain rules and regulations, and we have to abide by them. And if you can polish those and you can abide by those rules as well, saying pleases and thank yous and sorries at the right time, you definitely stand out. Then comes the cultural element is that you should be a person who should be able to accept diversity positively. There's no richness, there's nobody who's rich or poor or this religion, that religion, from this part or that part. No, you look at every person as a human being. You treat them as a human being. So you have that kind of an empathy in you to culturally treat everyone as one. And the last element is the spiritual element, which is believing in yourself, believing that there is some power which is moving you, believing in yourself that there is a reason you are here on this earth. And then, unfortunately, when we come to this earth, when we are kids, we are innocent and we are fine. But as we keep moving ahead in life, we get so much caught in the materialistic world that we actually forget the reason why we are here. So getting to know what is the reason of you being here. So these are the 5 elements which are very important in creating a good personality. We all have them, but unfortunately we get obsessed with just one of them. Maybe you will see a person who's so much into the physical element, Sara Din is standing in front of mirror, grooming and buying the bestest of clothes and so much worried about how I look. Or maybe there's somebody who's so much unable to control the emotions that gets angry at a drop of a hat and then starts saying, behave aggressively, start saying bad things. So what if we really want to develop our personality? We need to take a paper and pen, sit down in a corner and check on these 5 elements and see which is that one element which is actually bringing a lot of harm in my association with people. Do people look at me as a calm, as an empathetic, and as a nice human being, or do they look at me as a very materialistic, a very obsessed, self-obsessed, selfish kind of a person? So once you start identifying, you will know which element you need to work upon. So a lot of students who come to me come with a specific element. Ma'am, I want to know how to dress up, what look nice on me, blah blah blah. Or somebody will come, ma'am, I just want to understand how do I come out of my past, how do I balance my emotions. Or maybe somebody would come and say that I want to be positive, but I just cannot be positive. Can you help me to really become a positive person? So these are different elements where I work upon. So I call them the 5 pillars of a good personality. And even if one is weak, the entire building would collapse. So that is what personality development is. And as I say that, you can say that personality development, or a part of it, can be divided into 2. How you have to be professionally present and how you have to be present in your personal life. These are 2 completely different things. Because in a professional environment, you have to again follow the organization culture, and yes, you have to follow the basic etiquettes which are followed in an organization. You must know what is the protocol of the dress codes in your organization. What should I wear? What should I not wear? You should know what is the gifting procedure in your organization. There's too many things under that. So we call them professional etiquette, and it's a part of professional polishing. And then there is a social etiquette, which is a part of your personal polishing. Because, for example, if you're working in an office and there is this lady who's got a whole pile of files, and she's walking and she comes near the door, and a boy is right behind her, he just rushes and opens the door for her. Fine, it's good to open the door for her, but in an office, remember, we are we are not into genders. We are colleagues. So there is no male and female. Whoever reaches the door first opens the door first. So that is a different protocol, because that's an office. We are all equal and we all are working for the same position. So there is no gender thing that, okay, a boy should open a door for me, a boy should open the lift door for me, or he should pull the chair for me, because out here we treat everyone equally. But when you go to a social system, in a social background, in a social system, we are ladies and gentlemen. And a lady would expect a gentleman to open the door for her, which they don't do, unfortunately, but they should open the door for her, or maybe pull the chair for her, because these are two different protocols you have to follow. So you have to polish yourself professionally and you have to polish yourself personally. And when we call professional, then I would say you must know what is the law of personality development. I just put them. Do you know what is the law of personality development? The law of personality development is, if you break the word law, L stands for looks, A stands for your attitude, and W stands for your words. So you have to work on your looks, on your actions, sorry, not attitude, actions, and your words. So your body language, the way you dress, the way you communicate, everything falls in that umbrella. So this is what a personality development is. This is how you need to remember that when people see you, you know, the unfortunate thing is, the fact of life is that we just look at the cover of the book, and we don't sometimes even open the book and see what is the story inside. Similarly, when people see you for the first time, they depend on their impression about you. So when they are meeting you for the first time, if you are unable to leave the kind of impression you should be leaving, then there are very few chances that the coming meetings with that person may not go very well. So first impressions matter a lot. And in first impression, how do you communicate, how you dress, what your body language is, what are the words you use, how do you give your business card, how do you shake hands, which may now be a very difficult thing, because now we touch elbows, or we just say hi, or we say namaste, but eventually someday we'll go back to handshakes. So these are some of the things you have to take charge of. And if you really know how to conduct yourself in different situations, you will definitely be able to leave an impact in your professional and in your personal life. So anything else you want me to talk about? Yes, I'm there, or I'm open to question and answers.
That was a huge lesson for each and everyone over here, because we might have been somewhere near about professionalism, personalism, but we don't know the exact how we should present ourselves. And
That is true. That is true. A lot of people pay a lot of attention on hard skills, you know, getting all the knowledge and degrees and blah, blah, blah. But on the other side, you know, like when you're walking, you have to have two shoes. So in a professional environment, you have to have the two shoes, but they are two different looking shoes. One is the hard skills and one is the soft skills. A soft skills is also a part of your personality development, because unless you are not empathetic, unless you don't have the emotional quotient, you will not be able to survive as a leader or as a manager or as a subordinate. So you have to understand these little intricacies which make you the person you are. So soft skills and personality development on your etiquette are equally important as your hard skills.
The thing is, I am actually overwhelmed listening to you, and there is thing that I wanted to ask you, since you said that Manushi Chiller was your student, right? So when she was introduced, yes, as Miss World and everything, when your students get a a recognition. How is that feeling for you? How does that feel?
Well, there are mixed feelings, frankly. One is I feel very, very proud. I feel very satisfied as a coach that I was instrumental in that journey. And spiritually, I feel very, very, I feel a lot of gratitude towards the Almighty that it must have been a good karma that such an individual came into my life and got me a kind of a recognition which everybody craves for. So there is a feeling of gratitude, thankfulness, and of course a lot of pride, because as a coach, when your child shines, I think there is no better satisfaction than that.
True that. Okay, so let's move ahead with the question and answers.
Just hold on. I have a question for Rita ma'am, if I may.
Yeah, sure.
Sure, sir.
So it was a pleasure listening to you, Rita ma'am. I'm addressing you as ma'am because you have a background from the army, and by default, anybody who's associated to the defenses of the country, they command respect. You know, hence I would like to address you as ma'am.
Thank you.
Ma'am, I want to understand from you, when a woman comes in, specifically a woman's perspective, what are the key differences that you notice between a woman who's been brought up in an urban setting and a woman who's been brought up in a rural setting?
The basic differences again is in their upbringing, in the way they project themselves or present themselves to people. We still have a lot of gap between the urban women and the rural women as far as their education is concerned and their social behavior is concerned, because we still, in a lot of parts of India, we still have a male dominated society. So women have not been given a chance to actually outshine or actually show their true potential. So when I get a lot of students who come from the rural background, um, I find that they have the thing in them, but they are very hesitant in opening and talking about it. So that is one reason they always lag behind. And of course, when we talk about the value system, yes, they are absolutely old school of thoughts compared to our urban women who are very outgoing, and they don't think bat an eyelid doing something which may shock you. But for girls who come from that background, it is very, very tough for them to accept it. But eventually when they get into the glamour world, they कहते हैं ना रंग में रंग जाते हैं. So then it happens like that. So there are definitely a lot of difference in their upbringing, in their communication, in their dressing style, in their body language, and of course in their thoughts. We still have a lot of gap.
Okay. Can I ask her one more question? Do we have the time?
Sure.
Okay. So another thing that I wanted to understand is, what is the level of hesitation that people have with respect to acceptance of grooming? For example, if tomorrow you groom me and you tell me, Sarita, you need to cut your hair short, I am going to be very, very hesitant, and also I'm going to offer a lot of resistance with respect to an advice that comes my way, despite me actually voluntarily asking you for help. Do you think it's a very common phenomena? And if yes, then how do you get people to agree to the advice that you've given and make sure that it is implemented in the right manner?
Yeah. First and foremost, I don't give advice. Being a life coach, I get it out of them. Like we have certain tools we use. I use a lot of tools where I ask them a question. So what do you think is stopping you from making you look more beautiful? So she would say this. I said, have you ever considered looking at somebody? Okay, can you tell me who is that person you think is your role model? So when she will name that, and I'll say, okay, what are the things you admire in her? And then slowly, I tweak it in such a way that it comes out of her mouth only. Ma'am, do you think if I cut my hair, I'll look nicer? So these are some of the tools I use. And yes, I don't straight away jump to that, because I have to first lay a foundation of faith in them. They have to have faith in me. And that can only come when I get down to that completely one-on-one persona with them, when I know their life inside out. I use a lot of tools right in the first 3-4 days of my training, where we actually go back into their life, right into their childhood, and pick up all the scars they have faced. And when they open up, as a life coach, what I feel is that when they open up, they start developing that kind of a faith that whatever ma'am is saying, would be something good for me. And then when we remove those cards and they feel a little good about themselves, and then they say, now how are you feeling? I'm feeling good. So would you like to now start looking good too? Okay, let's do this.
Wow.
And then it comes out of them, ma'am, do you think I should get my eyebrows tweezed? Ma'am, do you think I should wear contact lenses? So then it comes from them. And I never say good or bad, but I do give them advice. Ki the best color would be this, the best hairstyle would be this. And I never go with them to get it cut. I just let them face it. They said a melody khao kuch jaan jao. So I give it to them. Okay, go learn it for yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's actually a pleasure listening to you. Also, I have one more question. Who do you think has more drive, women from the urban sector or women from the rural sector? Who are more driven, or is it it doesn't depend on your origin at all?
I didn't get your question. Who's the most?
Who's most driven? For example, when you're meeting people, right? There are certain people who have fire in the belly to go there, to achieve it, to rule the world. Where do you see that fire more often, or is the fire completely independent of the origin of the person?
I think it's completely independent. Also depends on, as I said, on their upbringing, because a lot of parents nowadays are so much drawn into the glamour world with all these real shows which happen on the television, all those reality shows like Saregama and Dance This and Dance. So parents want their children to be there. I have seen a lot of events or a lot of kids contests where the parents are pushing their child on the stage, and the child is coming on stage and doesn't want to perform and is crying, and the mother is showing this to like, jaldi karo piche reh jaye. So I feel sad for them. So it's a mixed crowd which comes to me. Some of them are really having that dream, and some of them have been pushed by their parents and actually thought of ending my life as well. But when I was in school, I will just connect this dot. When I was in school, they were having their annual day, and they had this annual drama, and I knew that I was good at acting, so I went for the audition. So when the teacher saw me, the one who was auditioning me, when she saw me, she says, what are you doing here? I said, ma'am, I have come to audition for the leading lady. So she laughed at me in front of everyone and said, look at her, she wants to be the leading lady. So it was a knife, which was invisible knife, which actually broke my heart. And then when I argued with her, she slapped me in front of everyone. And when she slapped me, I still, when I think about it, I feel that tingle on my cheek. And on the other side, when I gave up, somebody's mic is on.
Yeah,
So,
could everybody else just go on mute, please?
So on the other side, when I was going through that depression, as I said, and when I was thinking that my life has come to an end, another of my teacher, she came home and she shook me to reality, and she said, do not make anybody else's opinion your own reality. She said, beta, you have to find your value. The first thing you have to do is to love yourself as you are, accept yourself as you are. And she shook me so much that her words were the turning point of my life. And when I left and yes, then I came across this advertisement to join the army, and with great fear in me, I went for it, and I got through it because height was not the criteria at that time, and I went through it, and everything happened. But when I was thinking of transitioning into the civil life, at that time, I was thinking not only about this officer's like qualities, but also about that teacher who slapped me, and the teacher who actually brought me out of that prison. So I always wanted to be a teacher who was the one who will pull people out of their prison. And that is what pushed me to become a life coach, to push me to be a happiness coach, a law of attraction coach, and all those things I did so that I can help people come out of that same prison where I was once caged. So that's the reason I now what I do, I combine all these modalities along with my personality development coaching, and then I work on a child one-on-one. Yeah.
Wow.
Thank you.
I mean, wow.
Thank you so much.
There is one more question that we have. We being from India, there is one thing that it's in mind. People usually have that in their mind that people should always never lose their integrity. That is the Indian values that we have. Let's just say eating food with our own hands and everything. There is one picture of Aishwarya Rai which is still not famous when she comes winning like pageant glam award, and then she is eating with her mother with her own hands in that picture. So what is that you would like to tell about it? Because as you
Yeah.
said, that etiquette is something that is necessary for each and everyone. Let it be
Yeah.
anyone.
Yeah. Yeah. So etiquette, I said, is a part of social upbringing. Social means being in a society, being with other people around you. But when I talk about being you, that's an entirely different thing. Yes, but when you are in front of people who would expect you to behave in a certain way, then you have to follow the right etiquette. But when you are at home, of course you cannot. Your mom is eating with the heart say, and you are eating with fork and spoon. Again, there is this gap between you and your family. So when it comes to your being original, your value system, your family, your integrity, yes, you follow. You have to look at the situation where you are in. If you are at home, there is this saying which says, do in Rome as Romans do. So when you are at home, be yourself. But when you are in a place where we are expected to be of a certain mold, then you transition into that mold. So check yourself accordingly. For example, if I'm teaching in a college, I'm wearing a business suit and I'm teaching them. On the other side, if I'm in the slum, I know I will not be accepted like that, and those people would never be able to learn from me if I land up in a business suit. So I come down in in just those casual cottons, something which will gel with that environment. So you have to be your own judge, where you have to be your real self and where you have to wear that social mask. I would call it a mask, where you will wear that social mask to stand out in the crowd. Because as I said, people will judge you all the time. So when you're with people, you have to behave in a certain way. But when you are you with your family, then you have to be you. Nobody's judging you.
Thank you. It was my honor.
Thank you.
I must say, it was really my honor that I could have a one-to-one talk with you
Thank you
and
so much.
basically learn. And there is one request from each and everyone from the attendees, like how we could approach you. For example, if there are some people who want to learn these kinds of etiquettes and everything, how could they approach you?
Okay. One, I'm there on LinkedIn. Two, I'm there on Facebook. And yes, my email ID is very, very simple. And I have my websites. If you just type Rita Gangwani, I own a company called Riga House. Rita Gangwani's House of Personality Transformation. You will find my number anywhere on the net. Otherwise, my email ID is very simple, ritagangwani@hotmail.com. You can always write to me. And otherwise, you can hunt me out on these social platforms and approach me from there. And of course, I'll be able to help you out. I do have a lot of students who are from the corporate background, and also a lot of, and I must tell you this, now we have beauty contests for every age group. We have for teenagers, we have for men and women, we have for married women as well. And age is no limit. We also have a lady, last I attended, she was 67 and she went for Mrs. Classic. So they encourage beauty contestants, beauty contest encourage women and men from all age groups to attend. So if you want to polish yourself, you can again approach me there. And at the moment, I have launched my free online basic course on pageantry. So anybody, first batch is going on, second will start from 5th. So if you want to enroll in that free online session for 5 days for 1 hour, most welcome to write to me, ritagangwani@hotmail.com. Very, very easy, not to forget.
Thank you. Thank you for being a part with us, and thank you for sharing such an insightful experience, expertise, and I'm speechless to meet you.
Thank you. And thank you, Sarita. It was nice to hear you as well. I hope I could stay back for the next speaker, but I'm in a kind of a hurry, so I would take your leave. Thank you very much for having me, and great, great day ahead to everyone. God bless you all. Stay safe and stay positive.
Thank you, ma'am.
Bye.
Okay. So with these, I would like to move ahead with our next speaker, who is Anshulika Kapoor Chaudhary. She is a producer, theatre director, a TEDx speaker, a performer, and a phenomenal actor. She is also a founder of Red Polka Production, who would be presenting today on the topic of entertainment. Welcome, Anshulika. Over to you.
Hi, thank you, Janvi. It is a pleasure to be here, and it was a pleasure to listen to all the speakers who have spoken. Yeah, so a little bit about me. My name is Anshulika, and I'm an actor, director, producer, also a TEDx performer. I have my own production house called Red Polka Production, which is the first theater and film production house in Bangalore, where we produce both theater and films. I have been in, I don't know from where did I start stage. I think I have been on stage when I was 2 years old or 3 years old. But stage is my home. So yeah, but professionally, my professional stint with theater and film started a decade ago. And yeah, so this is about me. I produce films which have been to a lot of international and national film festivals and have got applause. The last film, which was in which I acted, and it was about a housewife in 1992. It was a period film of 92. Has brought back 23 awards, 23 festivals and 13 awards internationally. Wherein in some of the festivals, this was the only Indian film which represented India. So yeah, we believe in producing content which is responsible. We believe in producing content which gives a message in a very subtle way. So yeah, this is about what I do. I was not ready to speak about any topic because I thought it was more of a Q&A session. However, I would probably talk about my journey and a journey of an actor. I would like to talk about, as an actor, what has been my journey and what is that I have learned, and I'm still learning. I think learning never stops. And yeah, so probably as an actor, what exactly is what I'm going to talk about here. I think acting is a craft, and acting, for me especially, is very spiritual. It's a therapy for me, because as most of the people think that, to become an actor, you have to be, just stand in front of the camera or be on stage and you become an actor. Acting is not just that. You might get acting, you might get roles initially on the basis of how you look, how you present yourself, or, whatever you have groomed, especially. But at the end of the day, you will only sustain when you learn the craft. So acting is definitely a craft which you have to learn. Like, where to be a doctor, you have to learn medicine, you have to study medicine. To be an engineer, you have to go in that line and study that. Similarly, to be an actor, you have to learn. There are a lot of see, for acting, what are your tools? You have to first understand that. What is that you're presenting to your audience? It is very important to first understand that what is that you're presenting to your audience. To present to your audience, your tools are your body and your voice. These are the two things through which you are connecting to your audience. So these are your tools which you have to work on if you have to be an actor. So if you see, most of the phenomenal actors in India or abroad, in Hollywood, Bollywood, anywhere in the world, are all coming from theater. Most of the phenomenal actors come from theater, because theater is where you learn the craft of acting. And then again, theater and camera acting are entirely different. are completely different, because your audiences are entirely different. Your way of performance is entirely different. So acting has a very, it's like a study which you have to do. So suppose you have to play a character of a woman who is maybe completely different of what you are, like the character which I played, the last character which I played was a Bengali woman of 1992, who was a very subtle, who was a very coy kind of a woman, who was a completely a housewife. You know, for her it was all about her house, about her husband, about her children, about her family. You know, a typical housewife of 92. But I am not like that. I'm completely different. I'm very outgoing. I am, I'm very passionate about what I'm doing, and yes, I have a family. They are my priority, but also I am my priority as well. For her, her family is a priority. So the character was entirely different of what I am. Now, how do you prepare for that character? How do you understand that character, and how do you take that character inside you and play it? For that, there is a work, there's a huge amount of work which goes to understand that character and then imbibe that character and play it. So it is not just about standing in front of the camera and do it. There's a lot of rehearsals which goes. And that's the reason when you work in theater, you get that discipline. You get that discipline, you get that mode of getting into rehearsals and playing it and understanding the character, because each character, what we do, there's a lot of homework which goes behind it. There's a lot of research which goes behind it. So I would say that if you have to be an actor, first of all, you have to understand that why is that you want to be an actor. Are you ready to give that much of hard work? Are you ready to pull in that much of effort into it? Because just standing in front of a camera doesn't make you an actor, or standing on stage will not make you an actor. You really have to work to be an actor. So yeah, so as I said, there are tools, which you have to work on. And I have been trained, I am a trained actor. I've been training myself in these tools through different exercises, through different workshops, through different courses and stuff and all. So as I said, there are two tools. One is your breath, one is your body, and second is your voice. Now, how do you control your body and your voice? So there are a lot of exercises which we do. Breath is something which is very important for an actor. So you have to have a lot of control on your breath when you are saying a dialogue or when you're doing a movement. Because, for an example, if I say, हाँ वो गया था. Now, what is the mood? First of all, you have to understand the mood of that sentence, what you have to say. And then how you have to say so that it brings out the exact essence of what the conversation is. Now, in that, हाँ वो गया था is हाँ वो गया था, like you are saying, okay, हाँ ठीक है वो गया था. But if you have to have a different kind of expression in this particular sentence, you have to use your breath. You have to use your breath at the right point so that it gives that kind of impression or that kind of essence of the sentence. Suppose if you have to say ki, if you're sad about it, if you're sad about ki haan wo gaya tha, you have to bring your breath to a point and hold it here, so that you have to hold the breath so that it comes out in your voice. So it's very, very important to understand the breath when you're performing. And I'm especially talking about this is because no matter it is stage or it is camera, breath works with both. Because your body movement, if you see, there is a rhythm in our body. There's a rhythm in way we speak. There is a rhythm in way we walk. There is a rhythm in way we do anything, we move. So there is a rhythm in our body, and the rhythm is, and our breathing also has a rhythm. So when you have this rhythm inside you, how do you play it outside? The only way to play it outside is through your breathing. So when you move with a particular kind of breath, so when you're running, how do you breathe? Right? When you're panicking, or you're running, you're panting. When you're walking slowly, when you're meditating, how's your breath? When you're angry, how's your breath? Your breath, you are heavy. When you're sad, how's your breath? So you should know exactly at what point your breath. When you're happy, how's your breath? Your breath plays a very important role in creating your body language and your voice. And once you understand the movement of your breath, you have a hold on your breath, you can work on both your voice and your body language. And once you get your body language and your voice according to the character, you play that character. So an 80-year-old would not have the same rhythm what a 40-year-old will have. A body language of a 40-year-old and an 80-year-old will be entirely different. Now, how do you work on that? Through this body. This is your tool. You get the character, you get all the characteristics of the character, you play the nuances, you get everything. But at the end of the day, it has to show in your body and your voice. And how will it happen? It will only happen through practice. It will only happen through practice. So like when you're a singer, you have to do riyas every day. Similarly, when you're an actor, you have to practice your tools every day. You have to practice your voice. There are exercises for your voice, for your breathing, for your body, for your physical, to keep you fit physically. There are exercises you have to do every day. So acting is not just about just standing there and saying your dialogues and coming back. Acting is much beyond that. And as Sarita mentioned, it is very, very important that as an actor or as an entertainer or as someone, who people see as an inspiration, to be responsible. So when you are setting an example or you are creating something, creating something which is going to the public, which is shown to the public, it is very, very important to be responsible and to be completely honest to it. And as an actor or as a performer, you have to be very sensitive about it. So I think in all those years of my learning, and I got an opportunity to work with some of the best people in the industry. This is what I have learned, that it's very important to harness your craft. It's very, very important to keep learning and keep adding value and keep practicing of what, as an actor or as an artist, what you want to convey.
Thank you. Thank you, Anjalika, for sharing your experience. And I might say, each and every mood that you described, we could actually feel it. Even though you were speaking, we could feel it, we could see it in you. So that was something that I really admired in a movement itself. And yes, so let's start with the question answers, if you don't mind.
I could see some questions coming on the chat box, but I did not want to break up from there. So yeah.
So if you want, I'll recite them for you.
Yeah, please.
Okay. So there are many of people. They are like, someone wants to be a pilot, someone wants to be a doctor and everything. Where did that thought come to you that you want to be an actor?
As I said, I think stage is my home, I started my journey on stage when I was maybe probably I don't even remember. I think 2 or 3 years. So I'm a trained dancer and I'm a classical dancer. So that's where my love for stage started. And I think I have never dreamt of anything else other than being a performer. Although life did take me in another direction where I am a finance professional as well. So I worked in corporate for some time, but then I realized that no, this is not my place, and I have to do what I have to do. And then thankfully, I was able to. So I used to stand in it sounds very cliche, but that's exactly what happened. I used to stand in front of mirror, and I am a diehard fan of Madhuri Dixit. So I used to dance and I used to say her dialogues and stuff, and and as most of us feel that, oh no, I don't have it in me. She's so beautiful, she's so pretty, she's so this, and but I don't have it in me. I won't be able to make it there, and but I think it's just that one step, and it happened. Yeah.
Great. I mean, great. Okay. So moving ahead, the next question is that what did inspire to enter into the production house?
Yeah. So I have been working with a lot of people, and I had an opportunity to work with some really great people. And sometimes there are stories which you want to tell, right? There are stories which are your stories, and you want to tell, and you might not get that platform everywhere. So that was my trigger, and there were a lot of stories which I wanted to tell, and I thought, why not just tell the stories from my own platform. I And that's when I just went ahead and because I'm from stage, I have done a lot of theater more than I've done films. I wanted to tell stories through theater, and then later on, it came across, it came together, and we decided to make it as a theater and film production house. But yeah, it was more of stories which I wanted to tell, and that's how I started with my own production house.
Wow, the thing that one more thing is there. People try. There are so many people who are now more inspiring towards actor fields and everything, like the theater, which was not the like situation long back. But now people are taking this as an opportunity, and people are looking forward as a profession too. But they somewhere lack some of these skills, or they are not might be able to pull it off like other people. So what is that one thing they might be lacking while trying for achieving their thing, as you said?
See, I think in any profession, one thing which is very important is discipline. Very, very important. And as a performing artist, discipline is definitely very important, and perseverance is also very, very important. This is a field, this is a field which is where you will not just get it like that, right? You might
Yes.
have to struggle for years and years and years to make just for that one role which is meant for you. Sholay happened only once, right?
Yeah.
Nawazuddin Siddiqui got his break after 17 years, right?
Yes.
Recently, Patal Lok, that guy Abhishek Banerjee, he started with a small role, and now this, after so many years, he got the role to play. So you have to be, first of all, you have to be very patient in this, and secondly, you have to be disciplined, very, very disciplined. And as I said, it's very important to practice your craft. I'm telling you, you might get a role. I might get a role on my looks today, but I won't be able to survive if my craft is not there. It is very, very, very important. If you see star kids as well, they might get a role, yes, because they have a lot of, approach. They can approach people. They have that, that the doors open for them. But it's very important to keep practicing your craft. Keep it, keep that studied. Never lose that hope. And if it is there in you, it will happen. Someone or other will definitely give you a chance. But yeah, discipline, you should definitely be very disciplined and very patient, and perseverance is important in this.
There is one more thing that I'm like quite confused, because when we say drama or a skit, it is quite actually different. But when we say theater or something, that is quite different, because whenever we say theater, it has to be, there is something which holds a meaning, some hidden message that we want to share to the world, the outer world should know, yes, this is happening, but reality is different and this should be happening. That's how a theater works. And looking up to you, you say you have a theater background as well. So how did you manage to differentiate both of the things?
I'm sorry, I didn't get your question. So you're saying drama and theater is different?
Yes.
No, I would
Because
not.
no, it's just a question. Like,
Yeah.
I have seen people asking these kinds of questions because let's just say when we talk about a skit or something, they generally hold a meaning behind it. For example, when I go for a theater event, right, it's a small kind of a thing, and it is done for some motive. It holds a motive. It, let it be a woman empowerment, or the Lakshmi case, right, the acid case, acid attack cases, or anything. So it holds a meaning in itself. While when we see a drama or something like that, it is beyond that. It may not have a message or anything. It's just crafting or acting for a particular story, like Romeo and Juliet. So what's your thought about it?
No, see, I tell you one thing. How did drama start? If you see, drama was started, because people wanted to bring out the social and the political conditions of the society at that point of time, and it was more of a movement. Drama is more of a movement. Theater is more of a movement. So every theater or every drama or every play, what you're doing, does carry a message, because it's a part of the movement. So if you see any traditional form of theater, be it street theater, that is Nukkad Natak, or if you see Nautanki, or if you see Harikatha, or if you see Jatra, or any traditional form of theater, it always has been into that social and political environment, to bring that out. Because that's, see, initially, how do people communicate? This was the only way of entertainment, and why not bring out, why not make the best use of it by, giving out messages through this? Because, it's entertainment, at the same time, it is also bringing out a message, giving out a message. So drama started as a movement. It's a movement in itself. So I don't differentiate between a skit, a drama, or a theater. It's all same. It's just that how you present it. Now, I am a street theater artist. I started my journey in theater as a street theater artist when I was in college, and it was a movement for us, right? And in fact, when I came to Bangalore, because I used to do a lot of theater in North, in the sense the street theater in North, but when I came to Bangalore, I saw that street was not much practiced here, and in fact, street is a very powerful medium, because here you are not calling the audiences, you are going to the audiences.
Yes.
And it's a very powerful medium. So I was wondering that, I wondered that why, it is not there. And that's when, I reintroduced street in Bangalore. And that's where I was invited in TEDx. And this was the first performance of street in TEDx in the world. So ours was the first performance of street in the world, because people never thought about it.
True.
That it can be
Yes.
such a powerful medium. So if you see that drama has always been a movement, and whether, and I would say any kind of performing art has always been a movement. Even cinema has been a movement. If you see, cinema has, from when it started to now, it does create, there are cinemas which does leave a lot of impact. And, as we mentioned, you have to be very responsible when you're creating, because you are dealing with a lot of minds there, right? So yeah, so I would say it's all same for me. Even Romeo and Juliet has a message. So I would make, it's all of, and again, drama is very, I would say any kind of performing art is very perspective. You know, it's subjective to a person. You know, how you take it. So there's an art which I would take it in a particular way, but you might take it in a different way. So
Different
it's
way.
all,
Yes, perspective is always a matter of fact. Thank you. Thank you. We were obliged to have you over here. And the stage is open for the questions. If anyone has any questions, Sarita ma'am, if you have any questions, you could put
Yeah.
forward.
I was just waiting for it. Hi, Anshulika. It's such a pleasure to hear you speak. My first question to you is, what do you think is the most valuable contribution of a producer in the field of entertainment, specifically cinema? Theater, I think, is a far more evolved art form, and theater actually tends to attract an audience that is far more well-read, well-educated. I don't say that educated is equivalent to a woke. Educated is not necessarily equivalent to somebody who's very liberal, but I do know that theater tends to attract an audience that is not the same audience that goes into watching a piece of cinema. So what do you think so far has been the most valuable contribution to the world of cinema by a producer? And who, according to you, is that producer whose work should be watched and appreciated by everybody?
See, I think as a producer, again, you know, it is very important that you should be very well, you should understand. See, again, it's entertainment. At the end of the day, you're also giving entertainment to the, you know, to the audiences. So I would not always say that it has to be arty or it has to be, you know, always very message driven and all, because at the end of the day, it has to be entertainment. And when a producer is putting money, because it's business for him as well, right? So when he's putting money, he has to get back the money, you know, at least make something out of it. So I would say but at the same time, a producer should also be very sensitive in what he is producing, you know. So there was this film called Makdi, if you remember.
Yeah.
Yes,
And
yes,
that
yes.
was a beautiful film which won a national award as well. But the problem, you know, when I was talking to Sanjay, you know, who produced the film, and you know, he told me how difficult it was to get the producer for that film, because earlier he was not producing it and someone else, you know, the Children's Society or someone else was supposed to produce it. But then when they saw the film and they are like, no, this film will not work, and you know, it will not happen and all that. Ultimately, you know, they had no money to distribute the film. It was made, but they had no money to distribute it and stuff and all. And then ultimately they decided, he and the director of the film, you know, Raghavan, or I'm very bad with names, I'm sorry, but they pull in the money, and then finally they released the film, and then it went ahead, and you know, they won the national award and stuff and all. So I think as a producer, you also have to understand it is not always about you know, giving masala films. It also has to have you have to be sensitive about what you are producing and what you're showing to the society. Because if you are showing the mediocre stuff, if you're showing you know, vulgarity, you know, कि हाँ एक you know, एक डांस डाल दो, एक आइटम नंबर डाल दो, फिल्म हिट हो जाएगी, या एक ये डाल दो, you know, फिल्म हिट हो जाएगी, get that guy. It's not always about that. It is also about how you are, you know, as you said, you know, theater has more intellectual audiences, because theater has you know, more has been sustainable for a long time, because I know, because of all these intellectual audiences, because they understand that kind of art. Similarly, if we have to increase that intellectual level of our cinema goers, we have to show them, we have to feed them that. If we are not feeding them that, if we are showing them something very mediocre, if we are showing them something very below average, then obviously that is what kind of entertainment they will practice. If you see a 2-year-old dancing on Sheila Ki's Jawani, you know, and you know, they're not even understanding what exactly that means, right?
Yes.
So we are feeding them with that. We will never be able to level ourselves up. So I think it is very important to for a producer to understand that. And I would say a lot of these production houses like Drishyam Films and Matchbox, they have come up with nice, good content-oriented cinema, which has also made a lot of if you see the film called Badhai Ho, it was such a beautiful film,
Yeah.
you know,
Yes.
and it has nothing, you know, where which we call entertainment. It was just a content-driven cinema. It was all on Neena Gupta and Ayushmann Khurrana. I would say for me the star was Neena Gupta of the, you know, in the film.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I think it is very important that we bring out those content-oriented cinema, you know, content-driven cinema. That's when we will level up the intellectual, you know, we will get the intellectual audiences to come and watch cinema as well.
True, very true. Also, I wanted to understand from you, you know, the hip hop as a culture and hip hop as a music originated in the West as an art form that was used to express dissent. And today it is accepted globally and it has become like the go-to art form when you want to express dissent or your unacceptance. When you don't want to accept the societal norms, rules, and regulations, you use hip hop as an art form to express your dissatisfaction towards whatever is happening. Do you think it is possible to integrate the art of dissent into cinema?
I exactly didn't get your question. What exactly it is? Like you saying that hip hop is a
The art of dissent, right? For example, when I want to, if I want to have a political commentary without being extremely vocal about my own politics, but I yet want to call out those who are in the positions of power. Do you think that it is possible to integrate that in cinema and make cinema that actually questions authority, but without being over the top?
Yeah, I think we do have a couple of them where we do get, you know, as you said.
Sustainable is this art form. Yeah, that is what the most important thing is. Like, for example, if I'm making a piece of art that questions authority, how acceptable it is and how sustainable is that model of questioning authority through cinema?
See, a lot of people have made that kind of stuff. If you see PK.
Hmm.
So again, a very subtle take on certain things, you know. Of course, because again, you know, we are public figures, and you know, we are going out to the public. Sometimes, you know, we make certain things, and it might hurt, you know, certain sentiments and stuff. So we have to be very, very particular. And then most of the time, it goes to censor board, and you know, sometimes it also gets cut there. So yes, definitely cinema, as I said, cinema is also a movement, and it's very important for us to bring, you know, ask questions through these movements. And it is possible, and I think a lot of people have now scaled up to do it, and a lot of people are doing it. If you don't see the mainstream cinema, but the art cinema, or if you see the parallel cinema, there are a lot of cinemas which are coming up and questioning, you know, there are a lot of questions which has been put up. It's just that, yes, you cannot be very open about it, because sometimes it doesn't work like that. Because that's again your perspective, you know, you are putting your perspective out, which might not go along well with other people or other perspectives. So so I would say that as a filmmaker, I do have a liberty to do this. You know, I should take this liberty, because at the end of the day, it is the move. I mean, as a performer, as a performing artist, it is very important to bring these questions out. And in theater, we do it. In fact, we do a lot. And
Yeah.
do a lot, and I think cinema has also been have started to. In fact, if I would say there were cinemas which were made long back, which were made by Mrinal Sen or Satyajit Ray, or you know, films at that era, there were more questions which were asked then.
Yeah.
Now it is more of, but I think Padman or Toilet Ek Prem Katha, you know, they are little subtle takes they have brought out on social stigmas we have. Authorities, maybe, you know, we have certain cinemas, but yeah, not very openly. But I think as a filmmaker, I would definitely take that liberty, because I believe in bringing out responsible content on my channel. So yes.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. There are some questions for Sarita, if you don't mind, ma'am.
Okay, sure.
Okay. So, how did you started your journey as an MSc?
Oh, okay. So I started my journey in the year 2013. I graduated. I finished my engineering. I joined a master's program, and in the middle of that, I decided that this is not something that has my heart, and I quit my program. And I came back, and I had no, and I had to prove my worth to my family. I had to show to them that the decision that I have taken is the right decision for myself. And simultaneously I just got a call to come and audition for an event that was happening at, I think, Monthly or Forum Mall, one of these two malls, I don't remember. And they asked me to come there and audition, so I did that. It was for Samsung, and it just happened. It was purely by chance and purely accidental, because I have always been a very, very academic kid. I have always excelled in all my my academic endeavor has been far more, I've been very involved with my academic endeavors than anything else. So me turning into an MC is purely accident.
Okay. There is one more question that is, okay, there are two different kinds of events. One that is something which is like having a family or something like a planetonic one, and something, there is one different kind of event where it is truly professionalism is needed. And when we work on both these kinds of events, there is a huge lot of difference, because when we talk about the other events, it is quite friendlier, it's quite different, we could use various quotes and everything. It's like down to earth. On the same hand, when we talk about the professionalism, it is like words does matter, what you say, what are you trying to mean in a particular word or even a sentence holds a responsibility in itself. So how do you differentiate both these kinds of events?
So, Janvi, professionalism is a necessity no matter what area of work you are in. You know, whether I am doing a webinar or whether I am hosting an event on ground, or whether I am speaking to an audience as an invitee, or whether I am talking to young kids in college, no matter what is my area of work, professionalism is an utmost professionalism is of utmost importance. Professionalism cannot not be in place no matter where you're working. So professionalism is important. And now if you're asking me as to how do I differentiate in terms of these events, the events are the same. It is just my content that is going to change. You know, what I say here might not be the same thing that I will say when I'm talking to 10,000 people who are out there to have fun. So it's just the way you the delivery style of your content is going to change, and the content is going to change. So these are two things that are subjective.
Okay, but you know, when we go in a crowd which is actually there to have fun and everything, there is a kind of thing that you go on sharing some shairis, some friends talks, some friends quotes, or even if it's have a family, some daughter dad kind of quotes and everything. So when you deliver those things, the emotions are also holds an important place. So that's the case. How do you make it happen? Because sometimes
now, Janvi, the thing is that it's something that you learn with experience. So once you have a certain amount of experience, you know exactly when to deliver what, where, and how to react to the response that you're receiving from the audience. So that is something that experience teaches you.
Okay, thank you. It's nice to meet you, and truly you are an inspiration for all the other people who are actually inspiring to be an MSc, an anchor and everything. But still that is a little bit of hesitation that people have, because there are not a lot more of examples in over for these works, and we need to learn. We need a mentor who could guide us beyond this journey. Yes, so that's the reason I asked for it.
Thank you.
Thank you. So it was pleasure to meet you all over here. I would like to thank Sarita ma'am for teaching us that yes, how we could portray ourselves when we are in crowds, how professionalism matters when we are...
Janvi, I do have a question.
Okay,
Give me a second.
Yes.
Sarita ma'am, the question is for you.
Yes, there's a lot of MCs around, and how would you stand unique from those MCs? How would you stand unique?
So, first of all, you need to understand that no two MCs are interchangeable, right? Everybody brings to the table what the person's uniqueness is. Now, that is understanding of the, like Anshulika mentioned, that content is something that is very unique, and everybody has an understanding of a certain amount of content, and everybody has a certain. So this is a classic case of demand and supply. So everybody has a certain kind of a demand, and you have to choose as to what kind of a demand you want to become the supply to. So if you want to stand unique, be extremely well spoken, be well read, be informed, be aware of the current scenarios in the country, read a lot, have an understanding of the brand that you're going to present, have an understanding of the audience that you're going to be interacting with, be presentable, be humble, be professional. That's it. If you have all of these things, I think you are going to be very, very unique and people would want to work with you.
Yes, got you, ma'am.
Are you asking me how do I think I am unique?
Yes, that was right.
Okay, so I'm not just an MC, right? I'm also a trainer, I'm also a best-selling author, and I'm an image consultant. So I bring to the table what nobody else can. I think that is what makes me unique. And also, I think I bring it to work.
That's really amazing to hear about you, ma'am. Thank you.
Thanks, Tanush.
Okay, I just want to add
John
something.
will take over.
Yes, Anshulika.
Yeah. Well, I just wanted to, not right in that. I just wanted to say that, a lot of people think that it's only the young generation, or, when you're very young, you can get into acting, and, it's only, when you're 18 or 20s or 20, is when you can get into acting and stuff and all. And, after that, your life is finished. And after 30, there is no role for you. Stuff. Yeah, I would say maybe probably in a mainstream cinema right now, we might not have roles at after 30. You are like most of the time I am offered roles of a mother of a 25-year-old, which and I was like, okay, but that's not the point. I have done roles of a mother as well, but my point here is that please don't restrict yourself thinking that I'm not young, or I'm not good looking, or I'm fat, or I'm slim, or I'm this or that. Acting has nothing to do with that. Acting has nothing to do with your age, with your looks, with your body type, with anything. It is. I got my first break in films when I was 32. So I would say, Bomin Irani started at the age of 41. So I think that is something which everyone should realize, that if this is your passion, if this is something you want to do, it's never late to start. Please start today. That's what I wanted to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Anything else any speaker wants to put in? Okay. So with these, I would like to thank Sarita ma'am for teaching us, yes, there is a lot of a difference when you present yourself for an individual and when you present yourself for in front of thousands of people. So we should know the difference and we should work upon it. And an MSc could also be a professional career for people. Yes, thank you, ma'am. I would like to thank Rita Gangwani, ma'am, to teach us the basic mannerism, the basic personality, and how we could enhance it more to present ourselves in social background or in front of a lot of people when they are expecting us to be a lot more different when we are having our own individuality with them. I would also like to thank Anshulika ma'am for teaching us that acting is like a go-to-go career. You could go on it, you could pursue it, and yes, breathing and small aspects of our life which we may never thought of, that holds a more major roles, or are having those priority lists that need to be understood and brought into an action to be a phenomenal actor in an industry, or even as a theater individual. Thank you, everyone. I would also like to thank Planotech Media House for providing us such a platform where we could have such a great interaction between us and we could learn from our mentors. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. With these, I would like to end the webinar for our today's session. Thank you.